Right, so we'll move on to Radioactive then.
Maria Sklodowska, better known to most of the world as Marie Curie, was one of the greatest scientists that has ever lived. A pity, then, that she should be so ill-served by such an uninspired, generic, paint-by-numbers biopic as Marjane Satrapi's Radioactive. Curie, played by Rosamund Pike, though, as a side aside here, it's perhaps a blessing that we're spared some atrocious French accents. It strikes me as odd that the cast is almost entirely British and the accent's almost entirely English. I'm not sure there's actually a single French person in this, which is weird. Anyway, Curie is an ambitious and prickly young scientist struggling to find support for her, as it would transpire, groundbreaking, world-changing experiments. Turfed out of the laboratory she was working in, she's offered space by Sam Riley's Pierre Curie, a fellow research scientist similarly not politically favoured by the university bigwigs. Together, they embark on the study of radioactivity and then the discovery of two new elements, radium and polonium. They also embark on a romance, giving Sklodowska the surname by which we know her best today. The film follows Curie's struggles to be recognised in her own right, while dealing with anti-Polish sentiment, chauvinism, lack of funding, illness, and the struggles of motherhood. Like most of her challenges, though, this last in particular is simply not sold convincingly by Satrapi or Jack Thorne's screenplay. Do you require feeding? She asks her daughters at one point. How cold. But also how alone, it being one of the few points that addresses Curie's motherhood at all, and how typically unsubtle of the film. A few times throughout Radioactive, we are treated to flash forwards to see various things that were, to a greater or lesser degree, based on Curie's pioneering work, letting us know that radiation is both bad and good, though mostly bad. While I have no problem with Satrapi adding something a little less conventional to the narrative structure, these attempts are curiously artless and heavy-handed, while, in keeping with much of the rest of the film, treating the audience like they're a child with concussion. Radioactivity is bad, children. See the Japanese man watching the big bad in the sky. Ooh, radioactivity. Quick flashes of a piece of archive footage, a la Spike Lee, might well have worked. Or, perhaps, as Pierre Curie warns of the dangers of his work as he accepts the Nobel Prize, cut to an American scientist sitting next to a Japanese scientist, and trust that the audience will get it, which really isn't much of an ask. Like Danny Boyle's Steve Jobs, Radioactive rather misses the point of its subject, telling us that they're special or important without ever really showing us why or how. The struggles and prejudices Curie had to overcome due, in particular to her gender, are portrayed as minor inconveniences. And that would be fine if the film focused instead on her science, but it doesn't. A few trite phrases from Curie, and her holding the odd steaming flask, are about all we get. Though we do get a good hour of how one of the world's greatest minds couldn't cope without her husband. Oh, and she's afraid of hospitals. This is important seemingly, so it's spelt out to us multiple times. It also seems to be so that's useful. Rosamund Pike is watchable enough, but very far below her best. And, well, Radioactive's not a bad film, but given the importance and impact of its subject, it's quite an unsatisfying one. And that's without the dream sequences. Grrr, etc., etc.
Sounds like a right steaming flask to me.
I take it neither of us have seen this then, Scott.
Yeah, I've not seen this.
Cool.